Ma'am, I want that seat. Her voice, a high-pitched whine, sliced through the cabin, like she was doing me a favor. The nerve. Truth is, Ashley Whitmore had no clue who she was messing with. Didn't see the quiet storm brewing behind my polite smile. She thought it was about legroom. A window view. It wasn't. Not even close. See my daddy, he was a Tuskegee Airman. They told him he couldn't fly because of his skin. Now, years later, his daughter owns the whole damn airline. Ashley just handed me the perfect chance to remind everyone of that promise, and she had no idea that her tirade was about to become a viral sensation, or that her life was about to nosedive. Karma's a bumpy ride, ain't it? Ma'am, I want that seat. Her voice, a high-pitched whine, sliced through the cabin, like she was doing me a favor. The nerve. Truth is, Ashley Whitmore had no clue who she was messing with. Didn't see the quiet storm brewing behind my polite smile. She thought it was about legroom. A window view. It wasn't. Not even close. See my daddy, he was a Tuskegee Airman. They told him he couldn't fly because of his skin. Now, years later, his daughter owns the whole damn airline. Ashley just handed me the perfect chance to remind everyone of that promise. And she had no idea that her tirade was about to become a viral sensation, or that her life was about to nosedive. Karma's a bumpy ride, ain't it? Rewind 30 minutes. Picture a corner office commanding a hawk's eye view of Atlanta, sunlight glinting off the immaculate glass desk. This was Abigail Richardson's domain. Not that you'd guess it from her understated power. Today she wore a charcoal suit, impeccably tailored, and her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, highlighting the sharp intelligence in her eyes. A small silver pin gleamed on her lapel, her father's Tuskegee Airman wings, a silent promise etched in metal. The video conference had just wrapped, but the echo of the board members' condescending tone still hung in the air. Dr. Richardson, the shareholders expect results on the Inclusion Initiative. Translation: stop prioritizing diversity and start making us money. Abigail refused to choose. They'll have it, she'd replied, her voice calm but firm. I'm flying to Chicago tonight to finalize the community expansion deal. Underserved neighborhoods deserve access to affordable air travel. Translation: we're doing both, whether you like it or not. As she disconnected the call, her gaze drifted to a faded photograph on her desk. A younger version of herself, maybe 7 years old, beaming up at a towering figure in a Tuskegee Airman uniform. Her dad. She could almost hear his voice, the timbre rich with a pain he rarely showed. They wouldn't let me fly commercially, baby, he'd said, his eyes fixed on the planes soaring above. Too black for their cockpits. But you're going to own the whole damn sky. And she did. Richardson Global Airlines wasn't just a business. It was a testament to his dream, a middle finger to every bigot who ever told him no. The airline was her legacy. Dr. Richardson, her assistant's voice broke through her reverie. Shall I arrange a private car to the airport? Abigail shook her head. No, I'm taking an Uber and flying on our airline. I need to experience what our passengers experience. It was a ritual. Regularly, she'd fly incognito, blending into the background, observing everything from the cleanliness of the lavatories to the demeanor of the gate agents. To fix something, you had to see it firsthand. And this time, it was flying first class. Meanwhile, across town, inside a McMansion that reeked of desperation, thinly veiled by old money, Ashley Whitmore was having a moment. Actually, she'd been spiraling for months. At 52, her identity was as meticulously constructed and fragile as a house of cards. The platinum blonde hair, the Botox that could stop time, the designer athleisure that screamed, "I'm wealthy." She was currently screaming into her phone at a moving company. What do you mean you can't move my belongings today? Do you have any idea who I am? The truth, hidden behind half-packed boxes and a for sale sign in the front yard, was that her carefully crafted life was crumbling. Her husband's pharmaceutical business was bleeding cash, loans were maxed out, and her credit card had just been declined at Saks. She was terrified, not just of poverty, but of becoming invisible, of being seen as less. The upgrade to first class, courtesy of her husband's corporate points, was the single ray of hope she had that day. At least people still see me as someone, Ashley thought. She didn't want legroom. She needed validation. At the Richardson Global Terminal, Abigail in jeans, a baseball cap pulled low, and a backpack was virtually invisible. Just another face in the crowd. Still, Abigail didn't miss a thing. She noticed the weary gate agent sighing impatiently at a young black mother, struggling with a stroller and 2 kids. Abigail surreptitiously made a note, then quietly stepped in to help. "Let me get that for you," she said softly. The mother's gratitude was a punch to the gut. Then Ashley arrived, a Category 5 hurricane in Lululemon, in desperation, dragging Louis Vuitton luggage like a weapon. "Careful with those bags," she snapped at the porter. "They cost more than your monthly salary." The flash of hurt in his eyes was barely perceptible, but Abigail saw it. In the security line, something predictable, yet infuriating, unfolded. Abigail's bag was flagged for secondary screening. "Ma'am, what's the nature of your business in Chicago?" Ashley, meanwhile, breezed through without a second glance. Same terminal, same checkpoint, 2 vastly different experiences. At the gate, Ashley was a one-woman show, her voice echoing through the terminal as she regaled someone on the phone with her important business. Abigail, oblivious to Ashley's display, quietly reviewed customer complaint reports. This was when each woman saw how the other truly was. Boarding began, and Abigail settled into seat 2A, first class. She needed to test the new seat design. When the attendant, Jessica Martinez, greeted her, Jessica, mid-30s, Latina, and exhausted, recognized her CEO. With a fleeting, knowing nod, Jessica confirmed she wouldn't say anything. Then came Ashley. "Yes, Diane, first class, where I belong. Not like those people back in coach." She stomped down the aisle. When she reached row 2, she froze. "Excuse me," she said to Abigail, dripping with false politeness. "You're in my seat." Abigail showed her boarding pass. "I don't think so. This is 2A. Ashley snatched the pass, her face turning crimson. "There must be some mistake. Are you sure you're in the right cabin?" The microaggression hung in the air, thick and ugly. The older man across the aisle pretended to be engrossed in his phone. A businesswoman in row 3 winced. Abigail simply repeated calmly, "I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be." Ashley was just getting started. "Jessica," she shrieked for the flight attendant. "How can I help you, Mrs. Whitmore?" Jessica asked. "This girl is in my seat." She said girl with a sneer that only the truly entitled could manage. Jessica double-checked her tablet. "Mrs. Whitmore, according to our system, you're assigned to 2B, the aisle seat right across from Dr. Richardson." "2B?" Ashley sputtered. "That's not even a window. I specifically booked—" "According to our records," Jessica continued, "you were originally booked in economy, seat 24B. You requested an upgrade this morning, and we accommodated you." The silence was deafening. Everyone knew what that meant. She wasn't the first-class regular she pretended to be. "Fine," Ashley spat. "Then I want her seat. Switch us." Jessica didn't flinch. "I can't do that, ma'am. Dr. Richardson booked seat 2A 3 weeks in advance." Ashley laughed, an ugly sound. "Doctor? Doctor of what exactly? Let me guess. Social work?" There were gasps. Everyone heard the subtext. A white businessman in seat 3C spoke up. "Lady, just take your seat. Some of us have connections to make." Ashley snapped at him. From row 4, an elderly black woman, Mrs. Dorothy Banks, said softly to Abigail, "Baby, ignore her. She's not worth your energy." That's all it took. Ashley raged. Robert Chin, the gate manager, boarded the plane. "Mrs. Whitmore, what seems to be the issue?" Ashley launched into a full-blown tirade. "System errors, my status as a premium customer, 15 years of loyalty." All of it dripped from Ashley's lips. "I'm being discriminated against." She actually said this. "You're taking her side because you're afraid of being called racist." Robert remained impassive. "Ma'am, we're not taking sides. We're following policy. Your assigned seat is 2B. "Then move her!" Ashley gestured wildly at Abigail. "Surely she'd be more comfortable in a different section." The racism was no longer subtle. Robert's voice hardened. "Mrs. Whitmore, I need you to take your assigned seat immediately, or you'll be removed from this flight." "You wouldn't dare! Do you know who my husband is? Do you know how much money we spend with airlines?" That's when Abigail spoke, her voice quiet but caring. Approximately $47,000 annually with Richardson Global. Your account is flagged with 3 prior incident reports. Silence. Everyone turned to Abigail. Ashley's face crumpled. Who do you think you? Abigail glanced up from her laptop, her expression neutral. Just an observation. Ashley threw herself into seat 2B. Some people really don't know their place anymore, she muttered. Probably using food stamps to buy plane tickets. The mask was off. The racism was on full display. Abigail opened her laptop and began to type, appearing to completely ignore Ashley. But if Ashley thought that was the end of it, she was sorely mistaken. The plane pushed back from the gate, and that's when Ashley's campaign of harassment really began. She was about to make the biggest mistake of her life, and it was all going to be recorded, documented, and used against her in ways she couldn't even imagine. First, it was the passive-aggressive jabs. Jessica, can you please ask her to stop breathing so loudly? It's distracting. Abigail hadn't made a sound. A few minutes later, excuse me, hon, could you not recline? Your hair keeps getting in my space. Abigail hadn't reclined. Her hair hadn't moved. Ashley was simply trying to provoke her, a wolf harassing its prey before the kill. Mrs. Banks shook her head from row 4. The businessman in 3C had finally had enough. Seriously, lady, what is your problem? A young mother across the aisle joined in. Ashley was shocked that people were turning on her. She pulled out her phone. She dialed the airline's customer service number. Yes, I'm on flight 447 to Chicago, and I need to report multiple issues. Your staff is incompetent. No, I won't lower my voice. There's a passenger who clearly doesn't belong in first class. Yes, she's black. I'm just giving you a description. Don't you dare accuse me of being racist. The whole cabin could hear her. I want to speak to someone in charge. Get me the CEO if you have to. She slammed down her phone. I hope you're happy, she hissed at Abigail. You've ruined this flight for everyone. People like you always have to make everything about race. Abigail hadn't said a word, but Ashley saw her silence as guilt. This was all Ashley needed to validate her racism. At that moment, Abigail picked up her phone and accessed the Richardson Global Airlines internal employee system. Logging in with her mother's credentials, she called up Ashley Whitmore's full passenger profile. 6 incidents in 8 months. 2 gate agents had filed formal reports. 1 flight attendant had specifically requested that Ashley be added to a watch list, and the complaints Ashley had written were filled with thinly veiled racism. Abigail's jaw clenched. Then she made a decision. She opened her messages and texted the chief of operations, initiating a specific protocol. This was all about to come to a full stop. Policies over competence. There was the pattern. This wasn't about a seat. This was about a woman who genuinely believed some people were less than others, and she'd been getting away with it flight after flight because no one had held her accountable. Abigail opened her messages and texted the chief of operations. Initiate protocol Gray on flight 447. Authorization Richardson Alpha 7. Passenger Whitmore Ashley C2B returned to gate. The response came immediately confirmed. Captain has been notified. She then texted Captain Anderson directly. Captain Anderson, this is CEO Richardson. I'm on your flight in C2A. Requesting immediate return to gate per protocol Gray. We'll explain on ground. She set her phone down and went back to her laptop like nothing had happened. Ashley noticed Abigail on her phone and laughed. Who are you texting? Are you reporting me? That's hilarious. Abigail's voice was calm, almost bored, just handling some business. The plane was next in line for takeoff. The engines were powering up. Passengers were settling in, some already putting on headphones for the flight, and then the captain's voice came over the intercom. Folks, I apologize, but we've been instructed to return to the gate. We have a situation that requires immediate resolution. This should only take a few minutes. The collective groan from passengers was immediate. Annoyed sighs, frustrated muttering. People checking their watches worried about connections. You have got to be kidding me, Ashley exploded. This is unacceptable. The businessman who defended Abigail earlier looked genuinely angry now. Are you serious right now? Ashley's face went pale, then red, then pale again as realization started to dawn. Is this because of me? Did she call someone? This is retaliation. This is illegal. The plane was turning around now, heading back to the terminal. Ashley frantically texted her husband with shaking fingers. They're kicking me off the plane. I need a lawyer now. Abigail sat perfectly still, her eyes on her screen, reviewing the documentation she'd need. Every complaint, every incident report, every piece of evidence that showed this wasn't personal. This was policy. Other passengers were grumbling now, looking around, trying to figure out what was happening. A young man in 5B muttered, "Whoever caused this delay better get thrown off." Ashley heard him, and for the first time, actual fear crossed her face. This is where things get really good, so if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that button because the reveal is coming and you do not want to miss it. And let me ask you this, should airlines bend passengers who consistently abuse staff and other travelers? Drop your thoughts below. The plane docked at the gate with a mechanical thunk that echoed through the cabin. The door opened and out stepped Captain Anderson. Silver-haired, distinguished, with that unmistakable military bearing that told you this man had seen and handled far worse situations than a tantrum in first class. He walked straight to row 2, didn't stop to explain to anyone else, just walked directly to Ashley and Abigail's row. He looked at Ashley. "Mrs. Whitmore, please gather your belongings. You need to come with me." Ashley stood up so fast she nearly knocked over her designer purse. "What? I didn't do anything wrong." Captain Anderson's voice remained calm, professional, the voice of someone who delivered bad news 1,000 times and knew how to stay composed. "Ma'am, you violated our passenger code of conduct. You're being removed from this flight. This is insane." Ashley's voice was shrill now, panicky. "I want to speak to someone in charge. Get me your supervisor. Get me the CEO. I'll have all your jobs." Abigail closed her laptop, slowly set it on her lap. Then she stood up with the kind of controlled grace that comes from years of board meetings and high-stakes negotiations. She reached into her bag and pulled out her ID badge, held it up so everyone could see. "I'm Abigail, the daughter of Dr. Four Richardson," she said, her voice carrying through the cabin without her needing to raise it even a little. "CEO and founder of Richardson Global Airlines. You've been speaking to me, Mrs. Whitmore. You could have heard a pin drop in that cabin." Every passenger was frozen, phones out, some with mouths literally hanging open. Ashley's face cycled through emotions so fast it was like watching a time lapse. Disbelief, horror, rage, fear, back to disbelief. That's impossible," Ashley stammered. "You're lying." Captain Anderson spoke up, his voice firm. "Abigail, I received your authorization. I've also reviewed Mrs. Whitmore's passenger history as you requested. It's extensive." Abigail turned to address the entire first-class cabin, and when she spoke, there was something in her voice that made everyone listen. Not anger, not triumph, just absolute certainty. "I want to apologize to everyone for this delay," Abigail began, "but I also want to be clear about something. This airline was built on a promise. My father was a Tuskegee airman who never got to fly commercially because of the color of his skin. He was qualified, he was brave, he served his country. But the airlines back then decided he wasn't good enough to sit in their cockpits." She paused, letting that sink in. "My mom built this company so that everyone, regardless of who they are, what they look like, where they come from, can fly with dignity and respect. That's not just a policy, it's our foundation." She turned to Ashley then, and her voice became harder. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is your 7th incident with our airline in the past year. 7th, you've verbally abused staff members. You've made discriminatory remarks to passengers. You've disrupted multiple flights. And today you harassed me, your fellow passengers, and our crew for the simple crime of existing in a space you felt belonged only to you." 2 airport police officers appeared at the entrance to the plane. Ashley saw them and her face crumpled. "Please." Ashley's voice broke, tears starting to flow, and you couldn't tell if they were real or performative. "I'm sorry, I didn't know. I need to get to Chicago. I have an important meeting. Please, I didn't know who you were." Abigail's next words cut through Ashley's begging like a scalpel. "Would you have behaved differently if you'd known who I was? Or would you have just waited until I wasn't around?" Silence. Because they both knew the answer. Everyone in that cabin knew the answer. "You're permanently banned from Richardson Global Airlines," Abigail said. "You'll receive formal documentation within 24 hours. You can't do this." Ashley's voice rose to a shriek. "I'll sue. My husband's lawyers will. Every interaction has been recorded per FAA and company policy." Abigail interrupted calmly. "You're welcome to pursue legal action, but I'd strongly advise you to watch the footage first." "Love it, including your phone call where you explicitly referenced my race as a reason I didn't belong in first class." The security officers approached Ashley. She tried to grab her bags, her hands shaking so badly she could barely hold on to her purse. As they escorted her down the aisle, she turned back one last time. "This isn't fair. I'm the victim here." Mrs. Banks, that elderly woman who tried to help earlier, spoke up from her seat, her voice soft but caring. "Honey, you're the villain. You just didn't know it." Ashley was walked off the plane. The door closed behind her, and for a moment there was just silence. Then someone in the back of first class started clapping. Then someone else joined in. Then everyone was applauding. And it wasn't just polite airplane applause. It was genuine, relieved, cathartic applause. The businessman in 3C stood up. "Dr. Richardson, I apologize for not speaking up sooner. I should have said something the moment she started." Abigail nodded at him. "It's not your fault, but thank you for saying that." Jessica approached, tears in her eyes. "Abigail, I'm so sorry you had to experience that on your own airline." "Jessica, you handled it perfectly," Abigail said firmly. "You followed protocol. You stayed professional even when she was attacking you too. That's exactly what I needed to see. That's exactly what I need in my flight attendants. You did everything right." She addressed the passengers again. "Thank you all for your patience and for standing up for what's right. The first round of drinks and snacks are in the house. Let's get you to Chicago." More applause. The energy in the cabin had completely shifted. People were smiling, chatting with each other. That strange camaraderie that comes from witnessing something extraordinary together. If this story gave you goosebumps, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. And comment below. What would you have done in Abigail's position? Would you have revealed yourself sooner or waited like she did? I want to know. Captain Anderson returned to the cockpit. The door closed. The plane pushed back from the gate for the second time, and this time there were no incidents. Just the smooth, practiced routine of a flight preparing for takeoff. Abigail settled back into seat 2A, but before she could open her laptop, Mrs. Banks leaned over from seat 4A. "Sweetheart, can I ask you something?" Abigail turned, giving her full attention. "Of course. Why'd you wait so long?" Mrs. Banks asked, and there was no judgment in her voice. Just genuine curiosity. You could have pulled rank immediately. Could have shut her down the second she opened her mouth. Abigail was quiet for a moment, considering because I needed to see how the staff would handle it. I needed to see if our policies work in real situations, not just on paper. And honestly, I wanted her to show everyone exactly who she was. Mrs. Banks nodded slowly. You gave her every chance to do the right thing. We all have choices, Abigail said. She made hers. Mrs. Banks smiled, and it was the kind of smile that held 50 years of wisdom. You know what? You're going to make one hell of a difference in this world. I'm trying, Abigail said simply. No, baby, you already are. The plane took off smoothly, climbing into the evening sky. Abigail opened her laptop and got back to work on her presentation about expanding service to underserved communities. 40 neighborhoods that had never had reliable access to affordable air travel. Thousands of families who'd never been able to visit relatives across the country because flights were just too expensive or too far away. Her father's pin caught the overhead light, glinting. She touched it briefly, a habit she'd had since the day he died. Lift comes from pressure, baby girl, he told her once when she was learning to fly a kite. The harder the wind pushes, the higher you go. He'd been talking about kites, but he'd also been talking about life. Jessica brought Abigail a drink. Just water, nothing fancy, and paused for a moment. Abigail, I have to tell you something, Jessica said quietly. When I started working here 3 years ago, I almost quit. I'd faced so much discrimination at my last airline. Passengers, other staff, management, it was brutal. But this place, you built something different. Abigail looked up at her. We're not perfect. We're never going to be perfect. But we're trying. You do more than try, Jessica said. You show up even when you don't have to, especially when you don't have to. After Jessica walked away, Abigail allowed herself a small smile just for a moment. Then she went back to work. The flight continued without incident. Passengers chatted, watched movies, slept, normal airplane things. And when they landed in Chicago 2 hours later, several passengers stopped to thank Abigail as they deplaned. Not because she was the CEO's daughter, but because she'd stood up, because she'd held someone accountable, because she'd shown them that dignity isn't negotiable. Mrs. Banks gave her a long hug at the jet bridge. You keep flying in that sky, baby girl. Your daddy's watching, and he's proud. 3 days later, the story went viral. Someone had recorded Ashley's meltdown and posted it online. Within 24 hours, it had 15 million views. Ashley became the face of entitled behavior gone wrong. She issued a public apology through her lawyer, citing personal stress in an uncharacteristic moment. But she never acknowledged the discrimination, never apologized for the racism, just blamed it on having a bad day. 3 other airlines quietly added her to their no-fly lists. Her husband's company lost 2 major contracts after clients saw the video and didn't want to be associated with them. Ashley's fall from grace was swift and complete. Meanwhile, Richardson Global Airlines saw a surge in bookings. Not because of the drama, but because people wanted to support an airline that actually stood for something, that actually protected its passengers and staff. And Abigail kept flying incognito, kept testing her own airline, kept making it better, one flight at a time. 6 months later, Richardson Global Airlines announced its expansion into 40 underserved communities. They offered reduced fares for low-income families, created scholarship programs for students who wanted to work in aviation, built partnerships with historically Black colleges and universities to create pathways into the industry for students who'd never seen themselves in those roles before. Abigail's father never got to fly commercially, never got to sit in a first-class cabin or pilot a commercial aircraft. But his daughter owned the whole damn sky, and she was making sure everyone else could fly it too, because standing up costs nothing. Staying silent costs everything. And sometimes the biggest battles aren't fought with speeches or protests. They're fought quietly, one seat at a time, by people who refuse to accept that dignity is negotiable. But the story doesn't end there, because real life isn't like the movies where the credits roll and everything freezes in that perfect moment of justice. Real life keeps going, and the consequences, they keep rippling outward like stones thrown into a pond. Let me tell you what happened next. 2 weeks after the incident, Ashley Whitmore's life had completely unraveled. The video of her meltdown had been viewed over 30 million times across multiple platforms. It had been covered by major news outlets. Think pieces had been written. Memes had been created. She'd become the face of entitled behavior in the age of accountability. Her name was searchable permanently. Any future employer who Googled Ashley Whitmore would find that video. Her children's friends' parents saw it. Her neighbors saw it. Everyone at the country club she'd been so desperate to impress, they saw it too. The country club quietly asked her to step down from her committee position. The junior league did the same. Her husband's pharmaceutical company lost not just 2, but 5 major contracts because corporations didn't want their brands associated with racism, even by proxy. The company folded 6 months later. They had to sell the main house, the lake house, the luxury cars. Ashley got a job as an administrative assistant at a small law firm making $38,000 a year. Every day she walked past people who recognized her from the video. Every day she felt the weight of what her choices had cost her. Did she learn from it? That's harder to say. She gave one interview to a local news station where she talked about cancel culture and mob mentality, never quite taking full responsibility for her actions. She said the words, "I'm sorry," but never really explained what she was sorry for. The comments on that interview were not kind. But here's the thing about consequences. They're not always about redemption. Sometimes they're just about accountability. Ashley made her choices, and those choices had results. That's not cancel culture. That's just culture. Meanwhile, Abigail Richardson became a reluctant icon. She didn't want the attention, didn't want to be the face of anything. She just wanted to run her airline and honor her father's legacy. But the story resonated with millions of people who'd experienced similar discrimination and had never seen someone held accountable for it. She was invited to speak at conferences, asked to write a book, offered consulting deals. She turned down most of it, but she did accept an invitation to speak at her father's alma mater, Tuskegee University. Standing in front of hundreds of young Black students who were studying aviation, engineering, business, Abigail told them about her father, about the dreams he'd been denied, about the sky he'd been told he couldn't own. "My father died never knowing that his daughter would build an airline in his honor," Abigail told them, her voice steady but emotional. "He died in a world that told him he wasn't good enough, wasn't qualified enough, wasn't the right color to sit in certain seats or fly certain planes. But he never stopped believing that things could change, that I could change them." She paused, looking out at all those young faces. "You're going to face Ashley Whitmore," she said. "People who will look at you and decide you don't belong before you've even opened your mouth. People who will question your credentials, your intelligence, your right to be in the room. And I need you to know something. Their opinions are not facts. Their discomfort is not your problem. Their prejudice is not your burden to carry." The auditorium was silent. "But you have to be excellent anyway," Abigail continued. "Not because you have to prove anything to people like Ashley, but because you deserve to be excellent for yourself. Build things, create things, take up space. And when someone tries to tell you that you don't belong, you look them in the eye and you say, 'Watch me.'" The standing ovation lasted 5 full minutes. Richardson Global Airlines continued to grow. The Community Expansion Program launched successfully, bringing affordable air travel to neighborhoods that had been underserved for decades. They created a scholarship fund in her father's name, the Captain James Richardson Memorial Scholarship, that would pay full tuition for students from underprivileged backgrounds to attend aviation school. The first graduating class of Richardson scholars, 23 young people, Black, brown, white, Asian, indigenous, from communities that had never produced pilots or aviation engineers before. And every single one of them was hired immediately either by Richardson Global or by other airlines who saw the value in true diversity. Jessica Martinez, the flight attendant who'd handled that difficult situation with such professionalism. Abigail promoted her to lead trainer for customer service excellence. Jessica now travels to every Richardson Global hub, teaching new flight attendants not just how to serve drinks and point out exits, but how to handle difficult situations with grace and how to protect passengers from harassment. Mrs. Dorothy Banks, that wise elderly woman from seat 4A, she and Abigail became friends. They have lunch every few months when their schedules align. Mrs. Banks always orders the most expensive thing on the menu and tells Abigail stories about the civil rights movement, about freedom rides and sit-ins, and all the battles that were fought so that Abigail could even build an airline in the first place. "You're standing on our shoulders, baby," Mrs. Banks told her once, "but you're building a ladder for the ones coming after you." That's how progress works. 3 years after the incident, Abigail was flying incognito again because she never stopped doing that when a young Black girl sat down next to her in first class. The woman was nervous, kept smoothing down her blazer, checking and rechecking her boarding pass like she couldn't believe it was real. Abigail smiled at her. "First time in first class," the woman nodded. "First time flying for business, actually. I just got promoted to regional manager. My company paid for the upgrade." "Congratulations," Abigail said genuinely. "Thank you." The woman paused, then added, "I saw your video, the one from a few years ago with that lady who tried to take your seat." Abigail tensed slightly. She still didn't love talking about it. "I just wanted to say thank you," the woman continued. "I was in college when that happened, and I was thinking about dropping out. I was the only Black woman in my business program, and I was so tired of people assuming I didn't belong. But watching you stand up for yourself, watching you refuse to shrink, it made me stay. It made me fight. And now I'm here." Abigail felt tears prick her eyes. "What's your name?" "Jasmine." Jasmine, you would have succeeded with or without that video, but I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you stayed. They talked for the entire flight. Abigail never told her who she was. Just let Jasmine talk about her dreams, her fears, her plans for the future. When they landed, they exchanged numbers, and Abigail added one more name to her mental list of people to watch, to mentor, to support. Because that's what the story was really about. Not revenge, not even justice, really. It was about creating a world where the next generation wouldn't have to fight the same battles, where a young woman like Jasmine could sit in first class without anyone questioning whether she belonged there. 5 years after the incident, Abigail stood at the dedication ceremony for Richardson Global Airlines' new flagship terminal. It was named after her father, the Captain James Richardson Terminal. There was a statue of him in his Tuskegee Airman uniform, looking up at the sky with its same hopeful expression she remembered from her childhood. The plaque beneath it read, "They told him he couldn't fly. His daughter now runs an airline so everyone could." Abigail stood there for a long time after the ceremony ended, after the photographers left, after the crowds dispersed, just her and her father's statue and the sound of planes taking off overhead. "We did it, Daddy," she whispered. "We own the sky now, and we're sharing it with everyone." A plane flew overhead, probably one of hers, carrying hundreds of passengers to wherever they needed to go. Families visiting loved ones, students heading to college, business travelers chasing dreams, and every single one of them was flying with dignity. That was the real ending. Not Ashley getting banned, not the viral video, not even the standing ovation at Tuskegee. The real ending was every single flight that took off from that terminal carrying people who might not have had access to air travel before. Every scholarship student who got their wings, every flight attendant who was trained to treat every passenger with respect, regardless of what they looked like or where they came from. The real ending was progress. Slow, incremental, imperfect progress, but progress nonetheless. And somewhere in whatever comes after this life, Captain James Richardson was smiling because his baby girl hadn't just owned the sky. She'd made sure everyone else could too. That's how legacies are built, not with grand gestures or viral moments, but with consistent, determined action. Day after day, flight after flight, one seat at a time. Remember that the next time someone tells you that you don't belong somewhere, remember Abigail Richardson. Remember that quiet strength is more powerful than loud hatred. Remember that dignity isn't negotiable and respect isn't optional. And remember the sky belongs to everyone. No exceptions. If this story moved you, if it inspired you, if it made you believe in justice even a little bit more, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button so hard your thumb hurts. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me what's the most entitled behavior you've ever witnessed. Have you ever had to stand up to someone like Ashley? I want to hear every single story in the comments below. Because stories like this, they matter. They remind us that accountability exists, that karma is real, that sometimes, just sometimes, the villain gets exactly what they deserve. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.